Enough time to double check, make sure everything is working. Hope you guys are doing great out there today, friendly campers. All right. Today, as the title suggests, we're going to talk about two things. Well, it doesn't say that. It says 34 things, 34 felonies. We're talking about that, and we're talking about one other thing, which is, why is it? And maybe this is just a political strategy, and I guess it's just good old repeat the lie kind of brainwashing. But man, there are a huge number of people online who are pretending to see things that are clearly not there in order to paint the opposing candidate in bad light. And of course, I'm talking about things people infer about what Donald Trump says. I mean, there's bad things you can say about the guy, right? There are bad things. He spent a shit ton of money. Why do you have to go with, I mean, I guess it's just because it's extra. I guess it's just extra. And let me give you an example. Okay, this is going around the internet today. This is everywhere today. Trump goes up on stage, makes a speech. He says, everybody, get out and vote just this one time. You won't have to vote anymore. I don't do impressions. And of course, everybody's interpretation, this is Val Deming's, her brilliant interpretation is that he's going to cancel the vote and become a dictator. This is what she says. She says she genuinely doesn't understand why this isn't front page news. Genuinely. This is difficult for me to believe. I mean, is she genuinely that stupid? I guess. I mean, maybe. Does she genuinely, she really thinks that that's what he said? That's what he was trying to communicate there? When the clear, obvious implication for everybody to see, everybody, a 5-year-old could infer the proper connotation, which is he's going to fix the problem in the 4 years. Now, I know that's stupid. It's not going to happen, okay? But that's clearly the connotation that he was trying to convey, not I'm going to cancel the vote. And yet everywhere, I mean, all over Twitter, people are like, oh my God, he said it again. He's going to be a dictator. And I'm trying to imagine these folks. Like, you don't have to be stupid to believe the worst. You can be influenced and be very intelligent. But come on, y'all. Come on. I mean, come on. I mean, I guess, I don't know. My feed is just inundated with these Ricky DeVillas and Brooklyn Dad Defiant and these guys. And I'm talking about Twitter because that's where I get most of my news. Man, I mean, these people, it's like, you got to be kidding me. And then here, look, here, give me another example right here. This is the celebrities, okay? This is the celebrities back in Kamal, and I sped it up for you.
You have an obligation
to be a part of that decision.
You might think it's not important. You might think you're not important.
But that's not true. And the only way we can prove that to you is by having lots of famous people.
Lots of famous people.
Lots and lots of famous people.
Just a shit ton of famous people.
But you only get this many famous people together if the issue's
One that truly matters to all of us.
A disease or
Ecological crisis or
A racist, abusive coward who could permanently damage the fabric of our society.
Do the math. Do we really want to give nuclear weapons to a man whose signature move is firing?
firing things.
But we can end this nightmare before it begins.
We can save the day.
For our children.
For our children.
For our children. For our communities.
For the children.
For our communities.
For America.
For America. For America.
Okay, that's enough. Look, you get the point. The point is, well, okay, here's the point as illustrated in that particular clip. They're conflating the word fired with the word launch. Fired, it sounds like he fired the missile. And that's what they want you to, that's their takeaway. The big takeaway they want you to get from that ad is a misinterpretation. A clear misinterpretation. A clear misinterpretation. That's what they want you to take away. It's remarkable. And I see this like all the time. And I mean, I guess, look, it's just regular pattern association. If you can get somebody to think about the nuclear war based on Donald Trump saying the word fired, I guess you score points. I mean, you do with some people. But God, you guys, come on. Work on that. Work on your recognition. Whoever you are. Not my audience. But whoever you are. Okay, now the main topic of the day. Maybe I should split this off into its own thing. But since we're here, I'm just going to launch right into it. All right. 34 felonies. 34 felonies. I want you to ask yourself this question while I double check the feed here. Okay, it's giving me a warning there, but whatever. I'm going to keep going. Here's my question to you. Do you know what the 34 acts are that he committed? 34? You don't, do you? Because there weren't 34 acts. This is a remarkable distortion of our legal system over the centuries. Centuries ago, learned jurists realized that a crime could be defined as having an act, some criminal intent, and some intended victim. Okay, those are the three things that you need to have a crime. If you don't have those things, all three of them, then you don't have a crime. That's the definition. That's the real definition of crime that should pervade society today. It does not. Unfortunately, we have done away with the need for each one of those three things. And now we get the perverse situation where a person who commits one act, you know Donald Trump paid off Stormy Daniel. And if you believe that is, I keep saying her name Daniel because, of course, my good friend Daniel. If you believe, that one act can be divided into 34 parts, and then he can be sentenced to 34 felonies for that one act, well, then you've fallen for it, right? They've done away with the need for the definition of the act. And in Trump's case, they've even done away with the underlying crime, and this will be overturned when SCOTUS gets a hold of it, but the judge allowed the jury to infer some unknown additional underlying crime that was in Donald's head when he paid off Stormy in order to defraud the public. And it's just remarkable. So not only do you have, now let me tell you how they got to 34 felonies. They added up all the money that he gave to Stormy Daniels. And then they realized, and now how he paid Stormy Daniels was his lawyer pays Stormy Daniels, and then he pays the lawyer back. Now, the way he pays the lawyer back is with regular retainer payments. I'm paying you X amount every month. So what they did is they added up all the payments that he had given his lawyer over a period of time following the lawyer's payment of the money to Stormy. And they counted each one of the checks that he wrote to the lawyer as a separate felony act. That's what they did. I mean, why didn't they just count each letter that he wrote as a separate felony act? You know, get a few hundred in there, or each number that he wrote. I mean, it's bizarro. It's ridiculous, and it's a distortion of our justice system. What Americans think that you can be convicted of 34 felonies for one act? Come on. Wake up. Think about it. It was one act. Even if you think that he did it and it was the worst thing ever, it was still one. And you can't even get to felony until you identify that underlying crime. So it was really a misdemeanor, okay? There weren't 34 felonies, it was one misdemeanor. if you want to be. Oh, and by the way, they extended the statute of limitations on purpose in order to get Trump. But you could call that legal in some realm of jurisprudence. You could say, hey, they were just extending the statute of limitations generally. It wasn't just to get him in an obvious attempt to affect a bill of attainder. No. You could sort of get away with that, although that should be overturned as well. But even if you got that, we're talking about one act. That's one misdemeanor. Now, I want to go on here and elaborate a little bit more about the rest of these requirements for crime. That is an intent and a victim, because these things are also necessary and they're not out there right now. We don't get them. Intent is another thing they've done away with. And you've probably seen this. In fact, I know you've seen it everywhere, because DUI, for example, is what they call a general intent crime. You didn't intend to hurt anybody. You had no criminal intent. You meant to hurt 0 people. In fact, you were actively trying not to hurt people, but you meant to drink. You meant to drink. And so what they do is they transfer your intent to drink over to your intent to murder. They just transmogrify your intent into something completely different, into a completely different intent. And then they say, well, we're done here because you have some intent. You intended to get out of bed this morning, right? So you intended to kill the guy. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The levels of intent have been parsed out over the centuries, different ways, but they've converged down into a clear distinction between people who intend to hurt others and people who are generally just either reckless or careless or just acting on their own. And we have divided up the laws, or we had divided up the laws to take into account these various levels of intent. But over the last 100 years or 50 years or so, we have done away with all the serious intent, which is why your grandma can be convicted of murdering somebody tonight if she has a cocktail at dinner and then somebody slams into her on the way home and dies, and grandma goes to prison. And it's insanity. And we've got a lot of people. I mean, our prisons have lots of DUI people in them, like alongside with other murderers, like real murderers. You know, you've got people who were in accidents aside. You know, we're imprisoning them with the murderers. It's crazy. Okay, the third category is the victim. And as you are probably well aware, victims have been eliminated also, because you can be convicted of crime without there ever being any victim or even intended victim. Now, let me make a distinction here. There has to be at least some intended victim for there to be a crime, but there doesn't have to be a successful victim. That is to say, if you get caught stealing something out of a 7-Eleven, and your argument can't be, well, there's no victim here because nobody got hurt because I didn't get away. No. You had an intended victim. The intended victim was the 7-Eleven. What I'm talking about here is crimes that don't even have an intended victim, like prostitution. Nobody's trying to hurt anybody there. You can say, well, you weren't taking into account the wife or the significant other or something like that, but that's an extrapolation and really just completely indirect in terms of victimhood. So it's important that we reestablish the need to have a victim, and we remove the ability for the state to be the victim. You realize in most crimes, it's the state versus so-and-so, and it shouldn't be that. It should be so-and-so against so-and-so, the state on behalf of the victim against the defendant, not the state on behalf of the king, which is what it is now and still is. It's literally a remnant of the old days when every crime was a crime against the king. And that's why you have situations like you can have a licensing violation where some guy never hurt anybody, never tried to hurt anybody, never hurt anybody, and yet he goes to prison because he didn't get his driver's license or something. And it's because it's a crime against the state. You broke the law. Nobody got hurt. Nobody was intended to get hurt. You did have an act there. But anyway, we need to get back to this structure that was embedded in our legal system for so long, because it's super important that we limit the powers of our government in huge whole categories that we can identify as being beneficial to society as a whole. And this is one way that we do it. We define crime as having an act plus an intent plus a victim. And if you can't identify those three things for every single charge, well, you don't have crime there. And I've just pointed out how each one of these things has been bastardized and just warped out of recognition. And now we have a guy being convicted of 34 felonies for one act. God, pretty soon we're going to have to re-up the old Bill of Attainder thing too. We just need a stronger court to enforce some of this stuff. Because they could go back and infer, well, I mean, I don't know. This stuff is statutorily changed now. We're going to have to change it back statutorily, most likely, because we need to get back to this, because it's just way too willy-nilly. You may not know, but the United States incarcerates 25% of the world's prisoners. We have 5 times the per capita incarceration of China, 3 times Russia. I mean, people go to jail in this country, in the land of the free, and we keep them there for long periods of time. And it's really unjust. So, anyway, that's my rant for today. Sorry it wasn't more entertaining. I hope you have a great day. Leave me comments, questions, vitriol, as I said.